What do you make of today's bounce?
Look, there's been a lot of noise out there. I think some of today's bounce probably has to do with just excitement and expectation about Nvidia. But we're in a market where I think we talk about earnings a lot and what a tailwind that is, but I don't think we really have understood that the earnings picture is extremely severe and sophisticated. Because what it's doing is it's taking a market where we used to focus and reward companies that were capital light with companies that are now increasing margin and increasing CapEx and really fundamentally shifting growth. And so for me, it's August, volume is light. A lot of institutional players are sort of well positioned in the momentum space. So even though the traditional September is a little bit negative, I think there's a significant possibility that that is not the case this year.
How are you thinking about all the macro factors? Obviously, we've got Jackson Hole later this week. We've got some economic data we're expecting tomorrow. How do you see the setup heading into this week's events?
So there are three main events, and you've talked about, PCE coming out, Jackson Hole, and Nvidia earnings. I think that all of them will be more benign than we're used to, and I say that for the following reasons. Nvidia is pricing in, from a volatility perspective, the smallest move in the options market that it's seen in 8 quarters. And that's not surprising. If you look at most analysts' expectations, and certainly ours, we think this is going to be a less severe both numbers and growth and changes to the forward estimates. So that makes sense in terms of sort of what you're seeing in the market. Jackson Hole, I think, will also be disappointing to a lot of individuals. People are really hoping and expecting that Warsh will change his tune, especially given what we've seen out of Besant and conversations around manipulation of the curve. But I think that's a little bit naive to expect that he will deviate from any of the communication or lack of communication and forecasting strategies. And then in PCE, I think you'll see a little bit more of the same, which is I think you will see that, inflation is decreasing. And so that these three things that we have, as tailwinds of the market that continue to have us being bullish, very robust earnings picture, AI and secular tailwind, and moderating inflation will continue over time and through the noise, especially the interest rate curve noise, to keep markets coming up.
Moving higher today, we're up by more than 1% at the moment. Raymond James becoming more bullish on the heavyweight of heavyweights here. They're raising their price target to 352. That is up from 330. They maintain a strong buy rating. So there's not just conviction here, there's conviction upon conviction. It's a call, though, for Raymond James, not just about his GPU business. They see a growing opportunity in CPUs because Raymond James has been across AMD as well this morning. But they think the growing opportunity in CPUs could add another leg to the Nvidia growth story. Why does the CPU component matter? Because it's still a smaller piece of Nvidia's overall business here. It's just 3% of sales today for that piece of the business, but they expect that to grow to around 5% of total revenue by 2028, and they expect it to be, even though again it's a smaller portion, they expect it to be its fastest growing business here. So it's part of the growth story here, and they believe that Nvidia has a path to be the world leader in CPU revenue within the next several years. And this is with them also, there's constructive views on AMD as well. So we know Nvidia is best known for the GPUs, and that's been a big part of the story because they've been the leader here, the AI kingpin and kingmaker there. But they see agentic AI as the next driver, and that's why they see the growth story for CPUs here. And they'll be used to reason, to work through tasks, use tools, retrieve information, take on multiple actions. But again, we got the big test in front of us with Nvidia's earnings due.
Really looking forward to it. I haven't heard anything bad for all the analyst calls that we've heard from this week with GPUs, CPUs, the backlog for Vera Rubin and Blackwell. And so there's a lot of high expectations. So we'll watch for that tomorrow.
So, as you mentioned, NVIDIA and then you've got AI startup Perplexity are making this push to bring AI directly to your desktop versus running it through all of the major cloud providers. So Perplexity this morning out with that announcement saying it's the first what they call full stack AI platform that can run entirely on local hardware, so local computers. It is going to run on Nvidia's desktop sized AI computer that's designed to really run some of these large AI models locally. It's called DGX Spark. Perplexity said during a demo that the more hardware partners, I should say, are going to be coming. And the pitch here that they're making is about lower costs. So instead of sending every prompt, every piece of data out to a data center, to a cloud provider, the AI can just run directly on this machine. So potentially lowers compute and then token costs, which is a big topic for a lot of CFOs we talk to, but also potentially help keep some sensitive data private so you're not sending it out there to the cloud in this example. So Perplexity, though, still does say if a task is going to require more powerful frontier level reasoning, the system is still going to be asking a user for permission, and then it still needs to send a portion of that out to the cloud. So interesting note as well, it is going to launch on Alibaba's open source Qwen model. That will happen locally, and then it does say NVIDIA's open source model is going to be coming soon. Perplexity not alone here. We've seen Apple do this with the Mac Mini. It's been betting big on local hardware and AI, and then has this partnership with OpenClaw, if you remember the buzzy AI agent. And Microsoft is also pushing into some of these AI devices as well. The big question is going to be performance. So some of the most powerful AI models still do need to run in the cloud. Perplexity's system itself will still need to send those harder tasks out to the cloud with user permission, as I mentioned, so not entirely going to be able to run locally. And then for NVIDIA, it is another signal. This company is positioning itself in every angle of AI, including some of these smaller local hardware plays. It does also come, guys, amid some M&A reports between these two companies. NVIDIA reportedly looking to buy Perplexity for about $30 billion. No comment from either company on that, but clearly getting closer on the partnership side. Back over to you.
Yeah, build it and maybe potentially down the road buy it. Exactly. Kate, I wanted to get your thoughts on the news out from OpenAI, which released some new benchmarks related to its Jalapeno chip, arguing it has better performance and energy efficiency than NVIDIA's counterpart. What do you make of that as we think about just this complicated web of the full stack of AI?
NVIDIA is everywhere, Leslie, every headline. Well, it's OpenAI in particular has been trying to diversify away from NVIDIA. I mean, we've seen this with Amazon. We've seen a lot more competitors. We've seen other companies try to basically do what NVIDIA is doing. And again, it gets back to the cost discussion. So for OpenAI, when they announced this, they said, in part, it's a way to lower their own costs as this company looks to go public. It's very important for margins that they're able to control the cost a bit more. But interesting on performance, I think a lot of the up-and-coming semiconductor makers are seen as sort of
earnings. Now, we obviously have a huge earnings report coming up tomorrow with Nvidia, which is one of the names that you can trade as a single stock future. Why is that particularly attractive right before that report? And let's speak specifically to Nvidia, as that's sort of the Super Bowl coming our way tomorrow.
Yeah, I think this is a great time to talk about that use case, because Nvidia, certainly all of the tech stocks, the volatility in its tech stocks go up because Nvidia is reporting. Even the volatility of the index itself, the NASDAQ index tends to be heightened. So if you take, for example, someone that may be long Nvidia, that wants to hedge some or all of that exposure into the earnings, there's a couple ways they can do it, right? But for some, I think there's one particular use case where this gets very attractive. And that's someone that may be buying puts, for example, on Nvidia to hedge a long position in the stock. Well, we know that, like I just said, the volatility goes way up into earnings. So you wind up paying a lot of money for that put protection, such that you might see a decline in Nvidia and actually lose money on a put because of what, a lot of people might refer to as vol crush, right? With single stock futures, we have that static delta. So we don't have that optionality that exists if you were using options to hedge that position. So I think that's one really interesting use case. And I don't mean to say you should trade this and not options, right? There's a lot of creative things you can do with options. But for someone that maybe is buying premium ahead of earnings like that, this might be a very attractive alternative to them.
Well, you don't have to worry about vol crush then. But you mentioned liquidity as one of the things that makes SFS attractive. But it's also a big challenge for a new trading product, right? Because you have to have enough buyers and sellers in the market to make the contracts genuinely useful. What are you seeing in terms of volume and spreads and market depth here? Because I think they were released July 27.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're about a month in, and certainly we remain really encouraged by what we've seen. Certainly the liquidity and the market quality is going to continue to evolve. There's no question about that. But just in the 3 or 4 weeks that they've been out, we've seen dramatic improvements in liquidity and market quality. So like I said, we remain excited, we remain encouraged. It will continue to mature like all new futures products. So I think it's something to kind of keep your eye on for sure. And I think it's a fair question, but we certainly remain encouraged by what we've seen.
Yeah, and certainly the underlying stocks that you picked are some of the most liquid stocks in the world. So perhaps even a little head start there.
That's right. I mean, that was by design, right?
Yes, absolutely. I know we've talked in the past about your outlook for 26. You were anticipating a 10% correction in the third quarter. We're now about 60% of the way through here. We haven't gotten that 10% correction yet. So what has to happen over the next 6-ish weeks for that to come to fruition?
Good morning. Always good to be with you. So, right, my thesis coming into the year was we would have a small pullback in Q1. It turned out to be just almost 10%, and then new highs by July 4th, and then we'd have another decline in Q3. I don't have high conviction right now that this is it right here, but I would say this. To me, the risk is in the next 5 or 6 weeks. That's where you're going to have pre-announcement season. You're going to have some seasonal headwinds. And look, in the short term, the market's not trading well. You've got the number of stocks making new lows is kind of sort of rising, and new highs are okay. You've got what most people refer to as a split market, the haves and the have-nots. So you add those together in this time of year, and going down 5 or 6 to 10% from the highs by early October would be super healthy, and that would cause me to believe we've got a double-digit rally into the new year. So that's our thesis. And look, if I'm wrong, we don't get this pullback, I still think we go higher into the new year. I just think it'll be more of a drift than a rocket.
Okay, so you mentioned some of the stocks. We have more stocks, a bigger proportion of stocks making new lows here. We have some weaker market internals. So how concerned are you about the headline S&P 500 masking deterioration underneath the surface?
And look, so you just kind of stole my thunder. That's what normally happens before you have a pullback or decline. A more serious decline, like we're not there right now, but like the dot-com bubble. Markets started deteriorating internally in May of '98. So it was almost 2 years early. But what normally happens is you get an index masking strength when, if it's a war analogy, when the troops have all left or died and the generals are left standing. This is not some bull market peak and we're going down. This is a normal, routine, healthy reset the table for a run to 8,000 above on the S&P. But you're right. This is what happens. The index masks underlying weakness.
So then what's our catalyst in either direction, Paul? What's the thing that makes us either see this correction that's a part of your thesis, or the alternative, we don't rocket higher, but we do consistently move higher through the end of the year?
People always say to me, why do you give time and price? Give one or the other so you can kind of sort of be right. And I say, nah, I don't mind giving both. And so my weakness is I don't know what the catalyst will be. Nvidia is trading poorly into earnings. I'd rather see Nvidia rocket into earnings and then sell off afterwards. I don't think that's going to be the case. Could it be Warsh on Friday? Yeah, but I don't think, is Warsh going to really do anything earth-shattering? I don't think so. Could we have a little bit of volatility based on that? Yeah. The answer is it's usually out of left field. It's usually things that I'm not paying attention to, and that's okay. To your point, what happens if we don't? Look, if we get to early October without any kind of tradable weakness, which I would define very easily as more than 5%, I think the window of opportunity for a decline, a reasonable decline of 10% through January will have closed, and the stock market will drift higher. We'll get through Q3 earnings season in October, and things should be fine. But I never worry about what's going to cause it. Just that right now the storm clouds are there for a routine, 5, 6 to 10% decline in the next 5 or 6 weeks.
And you mentioned Nvidia there, and of course, with it being tomorrow, we have to talk about this. You said you don't expect them to have a run-up into earnings or a sell-off afterwards. I want to ask about that second part, because as I was looking back in my prep for Nvidia earnings this week, 7 of the 8 last quarters, if I looked a month out post-earnings, and all of those earnings arguably had good numbers, they were still lower on the month. 6 of those 8 days after the report, they were lower. So what does Nvidia have to say, Paul, for the market to react against the trend that's not working in its favor right now?
So clearly you've done your homework. What I like to see with high flyers is I like to see them sell off into earnings. So Nvidia, today aside, Nvidia has been down roughly seven straight days or so. I like to see sentiment is a little negative on Nvidia. You hear people do the but everything's not perfect and everything is not rosy. So this is a good setup. I'm not saying they're going to beat and things are going to rocket. I'm saying from a risk reward basis, you like to see when the high flyers sell off into earnings. When Nvidia rallies into earnings and sometimes pops on earnings, to me anyway, that's a sign to pare back our position. I do like how it's trading into earnings, that it's lower and people are tempering their expectations. What they have to say, look, long ago I said with Nvidia, I cannot believe some of the earnings reactions. So I'm not going to opine and tell you what they should say. I think the fact that they're selling off tells you sentiment's weak and the risk reward favors the upside post.